الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بفضل الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم والعن عدوهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. That Allah Azza wa Jal has commanded upon us, or has prescribed for us, or has written upon us to fast. And we are not the first to do this, because as the verse says, كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِن قَبْلِكُمْ, as was written upon those before you. And the objective of this fasting, as it mentions in the Quran, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. And generally when you see the word taqwa or tattaqun in the Quran, you might see the English translation says to guard against evil, or generally the word taqwa, or to have taqwa, it says fear God. Ittaqullah, they say fear God. And the reason why you'll find many different ways of explaining this word is because the actual meaning gets lost in the translation. And the word taqwa, which is the objective of us fasting, comes from the root word or the word qi, which means to guard, which means to protect. So in order for me to guard myself and ward off everything that is not right, because generally in our lives we always look for solutions to problems when we should take a proactive approach, where we, rather than find the remedy to a problem or the solution to a problem, an intelligent person and a discerning person will look for what is needed to be done in order to avoid this problem. In other words, you would look at preventative measures rather than look at things that will resolve the problem after it takes place or after it transpires. So therefore I take these preventative measures so I don't end up in the problem I'm at. Take for example on the roads. They don't say on the road that drive at a cautious speed. You might have a speed board that says you drive in the old days, if you take a look for Australian law, in the old days you would have 70 kilometers an hour, and then you would have open road on the freeways, which was unlimited. Then they saw that this was dangerous, because then some people would know how to negotiate or command the way that the car is driven, and others would not. So they set the speed, say, at 110. Then they said, well, you don't, where there's traffic lights, then the speed's at 60. And then suddenly they said, but inside the suburban areas, especially where there is the domesticated areas where there are homes, it may get a bit dangerous, so they brought the speed down to 50. And they took all these preventative measures till they got to the school zone, and they said the speed's now 40. Then they realized there was dangers when people getting off the buses, so they brought the speed when the buses have flashing lights down to 40, and then to emergency vehicles in the same way. Rather than tell the people approach with caution, they set laws as a preventative measure. I know we may see these as revenue raising procedures, but it's, if you want to say there's a dual benefit. One benefit is they do make money, but the other benefit is the fact that these measures are there in order to prevent loss of lives or serious injuries. So we assess the problems and we take preventative measures. And these are based on studies over things that have taken place in our lives to come to these conclusions. So when we look at what God commands. As He is the creator, He understands what is best for humanity. So He says, do not do this because this will lead to that. Or do not take this action because this action will lead to, this or that. So this measurement that we take, this precaution, is what taqwa is about. To prevent myself from crossing these boundaries. And that's why when I pray, Allah Azza wa Jal says in the prayers, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ تَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ. That when I pray, prayer is supposed to prevent me from what? From vice. It's supposed to prevent me from immorality. So if I'm someone that prays and continues to commit immorality and transgress, what is the value of my prayers? Likewise, if my fasting does not prevent me from doing injustice, then what is the value of my fasting? So the objective of fasting is for me to have these forms of preventative measures and to protect myself. Because this is the key for me to move on in my life. The benefits of this month is where I am able to revive this. How am I supposed to revive this? Because the environment, if you look around you, prevents you from doing things. طبعا, we're talking in a general sense, not only right now with the case of isolation that we are observing, but in a general sense, when I am fasting and it's the month of Ramadan, people do less vice. You'll be sitting down, you say, I'm going to do something wrong. An idea pops up in your head of doing something wrong, and you say, I'll do it later, I'm fasting. I won't do it now, after Ramadan. Because you give sanctity to this month. So in this regard, because you have this thought in your head that it's the month of Ramadan, you develop the beginning, or you reinvigorate yourself. Basically you bring yourself back together to think about how restarting your conquest and moving forward, and talk about the conquest of yourself, to overcome your desires and to become an Adami, as the Quran says, a human, someone that lives like a human being. So I revive this taqwa within myself. This is the first benefit that comes in with fasting. The second benefit that you gain from fasting in Shahr Ramadan is the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam says in this month that the shaitan has been chained down. The devil has been chained down. In other words, sometimes people ask, all right, if the devil has been chained down, how do people still commit evil? Because they think everything's linked to the devil. Firstly, to give you understanding, the devil has no authority over you at all. La sultana. Even if he has no sultan, no authority over the human being. In fact, Allah Azza wa Jal says the guile of the devil is weak. So how does it work? It's a bit like magic. People bring up black magic, or someone's had a spell being put on them, someone's bewitched. Anything at all has an effect on you when you submit to it. Take a look at the cultists, people that followed Jim Jones back in the 70s, I think it was, or people that followed David Koresh in Waco, Texas, or people that follow any of these cultists that come out and everyone begins to follow them and the masses believe in them. The reason they have so much control over their people is because the people believe in their authority and they submit to them. And when they have this submission, then the person has control over you. If I submit to the devil has control over me. This is to begin with. If you submit, when someone becomes to the point in their life where they have no red lines, they will do absolutely and commit absolutely any sin, they don't have any red lines. It'll get to the point where someone asks, how can someone kill a child? Or how can someone Once I've crossed every red line, I don't have any more limitations. So I submit to my desires. Then things that I didn't expect myself to do, where I may look at someone like Saddam and say Saddam was a monster, I can become like Saddam. Don't think Saddam was born that way. We don't have the idea where people are born in any way whatsoever. People make choices. Everything they do is a choice. Saddam chose to kill people. Saddam chose to torture people. Saddam took this path, but this choice wasn't something that was from the very beginning, something that's built upon. So to begin with, so what does it mean we got the devil chained down? In other words, the devil doesn't have this waswasa that he had before and after Shahr Ramadan, the whispering ability where he comes to you and bothers you. And if you notice in Shahr Ramadan, you feel this serenity during the fast. You feel at ease when you fast. It's not there anymore. Because he's chained down. So now I've pretty much prepared myself for the ultimate enemy. And when I say ultimate enemy, the shaitan is a manifest enemy. إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ is an evident enemy. When we say manifest, he's out in the open, the shaitan. And sometimes someone might ask, because it's metaphysical, someone may ask, how does the shaitan exist? People do things. Well, sometimes you're sitting down and an idea comes into your head. As we say in Arabic, la ala al-bal wa la al-khatir. Something you couldn't even imagine enters your head. This idea that's placed in your head is how the whispering of the devil comes in. Ideas, bad ideas enter your head. So anyway, at this point, the devil's chained down. So I have that ability where I've subdued my enemy and I have basically an advantage. So after Shahr Ramadan, I'm in an advanced position. I'm not down in the dumps where the devil is controlling me, where the shaitan has complete control of everything that I do. So I get pretty much a restart in this month. Another thing of the benefits of this holy month that we acquire is gaining reward. If you take a look at the sermon of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, in the sermon Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam mentions things that we mentioned on Wednesday night during the Q&A, where he says anfasukum fihi tasbih, that even when you breathe in Shahr Ramadan, it is tasbih, it's glorification of God. Nawmukum fihi ibadah, when you sleep, it's worship. So even to sleep, it's considered to be worship. Hala taban, in a normal day, if I do wudu before I sleep, my sleep becomes worship. Now on Shahr Ramadan, I didn't even have to do that. I sleep, my sleep becomes worship. And not only that, if you pray in the month of Ramadan, the reward of the prayers are astronomical when you compare them to any other month. In fact, when I read a verse in the Quran, one verse in the Quran is equivalent to reciting the entire Quran in another month. So imagine I sit there and I say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Okay, that first verse, I've recited the whole Quran. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. That's twice I've recited the Quran. Could you imagine? After I've finished reciting the entire Quran in Shahr Ramadan, not only have I been rewarded for reciting the entire Quran, I've been rewarded for reciting it 6,236 times, which I think is the number of verses that are in the Quran. I've recited it that many times. This is the advantage. It's a time where you're getting bonus points as opposed to the rest of the year. Suffices that one night in Shahr Ramadan, Laylatul Qadr, has a value that's greater than not 1,000 nights. خَيْرٌ مِّنْ أَلْفِ شَهْرٍ. It's one night, it is greater than 1,000 months. One night. How many months do you think you're going to live? How many of us will live to see 1,000 months? to be able to see 1,000 months in your life. That one night is worth more than 1,000 nights. And all the actions that you do are so great in reward. And the whole idea in your dunya, you're here to what? You're here to sow what? Good deeds and to gain reward. Ra'suddin, I think the hadith says the head of faith is to gain reward, is to gain hasanat, to do good deeds. So I need to sow the good deeds so I can reap them in the hereafter. And this month, of the benefits of it, I have the opportunity to do good deeds and to acquire the reward from them. Furthermore, of the benefits of this month is I learn to suppress my desires. Because pretty much this is what makes the difference between humans and animals. You want to know what the difference is? A human has control over their desires, the animal does not. And if the human allows their desires to control them, Allah says in the Quran, "Inhum illa kal an'am, bal hum adallu sabila." He says, verily they are like cattle, and then he says, nay, or they are worse than cattle. If someone, they're worse than animals. When we say an'am doesn't actually only mean cattle. An'am are all animals that graze. And there's a reason why it only uses grazing animals. Because the grazing animals, they're domesticated. They're in need of, we're talking about the cows, the sheep, and the goats. They're in need of a shepherd or someone to look after them. That they become like this. They just adhere to their desires. All they do is consume. They consume, and after they consume, they digest. And that's all they pretty much do, without a care to anything else. So the difference between a human and an animal is we choose what we're going to eat. Could you imagine if I was to put you a succulent meal on the table and I'd serve you in a correct manner, you will eat from this meal. But if I was to get something out of the garbage dump and feed it to you, you won't eat it. But an animal, doesn't matter. If you got a dog, you put a succulent steak on the table, he will eat it. And if you got a meal out of the bin, the dog will also eat it. Just like when you see the dog drink from the toilet bowl. Doesn't matter, it's all water for him. They drink from here or there. And this is the method of an animal. Whereas a human is someone that can suppress their desire. A human is someone that can govern their desires. And a human should govern their desires. So when they're fasting in Shahr Ramadhan, there are things that are usually permissible for them. And in Shahr Ramadhan, don't become permissible for the whole day. Things as simple as eating, which is normal. People wake up, they have their breakfast, they might have a piece of fruit, they might have anything to consume. In Shahr Ramadan, they can't have a single thing. They can't eat anything whatsoever. This is where they're held back and unable to eat. Furthermore, in this month, drinking and all these other natural desires that people have, that they cannot do. And they hold back. So when they suppress the desire to do something that's permissible, by the time the month finishes, their ability to suppress or repress this desire becomes much stronger when it comes to what's forbidden. Because they were able to suppress themselves from something that was permissible. So they've developed a strength in this field. Something else that they have within this that helps them and they benefit from this month is the ability and in strengthening their willpower. Because it goes with suppression of the desire. The fact that I stop myself from something that is permissible, I strengthen my ability and my will. See, do not underestimate willpower in any way. You know, sometimes we may look, and we use examples of, you know, sometimes people look at a world leader and they go, how did this imbecile become a world leader? You know, a lot of people, they look and laugh at Donald Trump. But don't underestimate the willpower of Donald Trump for him to get to the top. Their willpower and the way that they persevere to get the top, don't underestimate that. And this is what's required. Man talaba al-ula sahara al-layali. Whoever wants greatness will stay up the nights. People that persevere, people that strive, people that are motivated. Doesn't matter. You can't just move along on raw talent. You know, a lot of people may say, look, for example, oh, this sportsman is talented. Yes, they are talented. They've been God-given ability, but they train hard, they work hard, they won't get to the top. There are other people that are just as talented as them that won't put in the hard yards, that won't work hard to get to the top. What do I benefit here? I can achieve my goals. And in this month specifically, take a look, a good example are the smokers. Every part of the smoker's body, every part of the anatomy is screaming out for the cigarette. They want their cigarette and they'll do anything for that cigarette. And the ability to hold back on this strengthens their willpower. Because sometimes when you are traveling with them, if you ever traveled with a smoker, they could be on a plane. Honestly, you're on the plane for 6 hours, 4 hours. We'll be leaving Lebanon in Beirut airport. We'll arrive in Dubai. It's about 3 hours, I think. Maybe less, 2 hours. They jump off the plane, the smokers. They've got the lighter in their hand and the cigarette in their hand. And you watch them. They're waiting for it. And they run to this room. And this room, it's like, it's like a chimney, it's a quadrangle fire room. They enter in this room and they sit in this room and they smoke, and the smell that comes from this room is unbelievable, just so they can have their cigarette, and they've been without a cigarette for 2 hours. In Shahr Ramadhan, they remain, like in Australia, which is still pretty good, for about, 13 hours, they're without the cigarette and they last. So they strengthen their willpower. They're able to command this for 30 days. This is one example. Other people, their desire for food, for water, other people, other things that are prevented, that they cannot do without, and they're able to control themselves. This strengthens your willpower, which also helps you to advance in life. How do you think, for example, the Muslims around the world resist? And if you take a look at Muslims right now, and the way that, if you look at the word terrorist label, the word terrorist is just for Muslims. You're either a deranged white guy or you're a terrorist. It depends who does the killings. If you're remember the guy in Las Vegas, Nevada, that started shooting all those people at the rock concert? He was a mental white guy. He wasn't a terrorist. But if a Muslim kills 2 people, he's automatically a terrorist. So the whole world, you're the focus. Anyone that resists suppression is called what? A resistance fighter. If a Muslim does it, they're called an insurgency. They're labeled differently because they're a Muslim. So the whole world's against you, but what makes the Muslims still stand on their feet and still resist? It's the fasting. The whole world turns around them, oppresses them, and calls them out. Even like, the idiocy of labeling them as killers and terrorists. The argument I always bring up, there's 1.7 billion Muslims. If we were all hell-bent on killing, there wouldn't be anybody left on the planet. If this is what our religion preached for us to do, there would be no one left. But the whole world fights. If you take a look, COVID's going on. Yesterday, I think in Germany, they outlawed Hezbollah. They actually went into the houses and started raiding them. And even though Hezbollah has done nothing outside of Lebanon, they just defend their own country. That's all they're doing. But they started raiding their houses, and because for the security of Israel and the safety of America's love child and Britain's love child, they do all this. However, what keeps the Muslims standing firm, and no matter what anyone does for them, it's the fasting in Shahr Ramadhan. This is what made the Muslim stand with barely anything to defend themselves against the greatest military mights. Because of fasting, they've got strong willpower and they don't stand down. They do not yield and they're not pliant to such dictatorial powers. Other than that, which obviously another benefit that we have in Shahr Ramadan, but we're not actually experiencing right now due to the isolation, is the congregation of people. Generally, people are isolated. Everyone lives in their own home. People don't associate. we're too busy talking to each other on social media. And this is why when people talk about isolation, I said we were already isolated. Where we will actually feel it and where we're feeling it is in Shahr Ramadan. Shahr Ramadan is a time where people actually congregate, where you meet other people, you see other people. There are friends that you just see in Shahr Ramadan, and then they go on for a bit of a hiatus later. You know, this is what happens. Shahr Ramadan comes along, and then people start to see each other again. This is the beauty of it. You start asking about your family. The beginning of Shahr Ramadan comes, you call your loved ones and say, you know, it's a blessed month on you, unless you're one of those people that sends the generic messages, which I like to delete. You know, if you really want to know something about me, you actually call someone and tell them how you actually feel. And at the time of Eid, likewise. So it brings people together, but I'm not going to dwell too much on this point because in this moment we are actually in isolation. The last 2 points that we benefit in this month, the first one's health. If you take a look, and this is before health experts came in and said intermittent fasting and the importance of intermittent fasting. Before the idea, you know, people used to always have, you know, have several small meals throughout the day was the idea. But we know Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, the Messenger of Allah says, Sumu tasahhu. There's a hadith that says, fast and you will become healthy. And this is a fact. You went to see any doctor. You know, sometimes a patient goes in to see a doctor and they say, oh, doctor, my tummy hurts. You know, doctor hasn't checked out. What did you eat? And then the person says, I half-cooked chicken, or God knows what I ate from some takeaway on the side of the road that I've never seen before, and the shop disappeared when I turned around. You know, one of these things that they buy anything and they'll eat just about anything. Then the doctor says, hold on, I'm not going to give this guy some medicine for their tummy. Instead, he'll give you an eye drop so you can see better what you're going to eat next time. So this is the problem. So sometimes I consume something that is not good, that affects me. So the first thing they take as a precaution is, if I have the flu, what do they say? Don't eat, have fluids. Everything's got to do with fasting. If I fast, I detox, I help my system. So in other words, if fasting was not obligatory in Islam, it would have become an obligation upon ourselves, which we would have made obligatory upon ourselves to give our digestive system, and further than our digestive system. We're talking our digestive system from cavity to cavity is being given a rest. Even you can't even introduce a liquid enema from the other direction when you're fasting. So you're getting a complete rest for your digestive system. Even your reproductive system is given a rest during the fasting as well. So a lot of these things have been put on a stop, and to a certain extent your tongue, so that I don't speak that much, because if I quote something against the Prophet or Allah Azza wa Jal, if I say, for example, God said something that God did not, then I've broken my fast for me to attribute or ascribe a lie to Allah Azza wa Jal and His Messenger. The final thing that we gain in this month is we kill our routine. You know, you have those people that cannot change their way of life. They live a certain way and they do not. Wakes up at 3 in the morning, goes for a run. You know, and that's their daily routine. You know, then they have a smoothie at 8 in the morning. You know, then they have a coffee at 11:30 or whatever their program is. I'm just making something up, so because sometimes you say something, someone says, oh, you actually meant me. That's why I said a coffee at 11:30, because I don't think anyone has a coffee at 11:30. But I just said something random because sometimes it hits somebody and they think, oh, hold on, you were talking about me. I'm not talking about anyone specifically. So we have a routine. Shahr Ramadan comes along and the routine's completely destroyed. Why? Because you need this change. Sometimes you need time off. Some people, they're married to their jobs. Their life is work. They wake up, they go to work, they come home, they're thinking about work, and their whole life, all they do, you know, those company men, they do absolutely what the job wants. And that's all they think about. And the whole time they're hell bent on making this company the profits that need, thinking that they're going to be recognized. But all the company the whole time sees them as expendable and that they have an expiry date. And when that expiry date comes up, they're not going to say, well, we appreciate your loyalty. Due to this loyalty, we're just going to keep you as an employee with us. No, your time will be up. So that this change of routine allows me to see that I have to see another side of my life where I can look further, and another side where I start reflecting on the hereafter and what is real and what is important, rather than this world that is terminal and will only exist for a short while. Because it's not only is it terminal, and the whole universe is transient. The whole universe is only existing for a short while. We don't know how long. And when I say short while, I'm not measuring it in the time that compared to humanity in our time. No, we're talking about in a short while, as it will end at some point. Everything will end. Everything Allah Azza wa Jal has created will come to an end, and especially ourselves. So when we look at this change in our lifestyle and change in the routines that we have, and the time comes for me to enter into this month, I have a real vision of what there is other than what I've been doing for the majority of my life. So these are the benefits of this month that I should be looking over. We still got, and this month's moving past pretty quickly. You know, you see the days have just passed. We're into the 8th day tomorrow. And then after that, you've still got the long run where we reach Laylatul Qadr and we do our Amal there. And finally the month finishes and it's an opportunity passed. And fortunate are the ones that get this opportunity again next year. How often does a year pass? A new Ramadan comes in and we start counting the ones that didn't make it to this holy month. And this is what happens every year. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to have mercy upon our deceased. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to cure our sick. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to fulfill the needs of the needy, to pay off the debts of those that are in debt. And if anyone has any issue that they want resolved, inshallah, on this blessed night, being one of the nights of this holy month, that this thing that they have asked for is fulfilled. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to hasten the reappearance of our master Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Mahdi. May we all be at his ransom. And furthermore, inshallah, Allah accepts your fasting. Inshallah, this month passes with ease and we overcome this pandemic and justice is restored and everything goes back to better than the way it was, we should say. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Can I get up?